There's a method called the multiplication method that works better than the addition or subtraction. So I'm going to use that method each time because it works all the time. All you do is you're going to multiply, add, and divide. So the first thing we want to do is multiply. So we're going to multiply everything by whatever the number is on the bottom equation, we're going to write on the top. And whatever number is on the top equation, we're going to write on the bottom. And notice I changed the sign of the top number. So now I'm going to multiply. So negative 3 times 4 is a negative 12x. Negative 3 times 6 is a negative 18y. And negative 3 times 32 is a negative 96. Then I'm going to multiply my bottom. 4 times 3, which is 12x. 4 times 6, or negative 6 is a negative 24y. And 4 times 3 is 12. After we do our multiplication, the next thing we're going to do is add. So it's going to be a multiplication, add, and then divide, and you'll have your answer. So now I'm going to add. When you add, these will always go to 0. So they'll always cancel out, always. Then I add this. I'm going to get a negative 42y, and that's going to equal a negative, let me see, 484. And then the next thing we do is divide. So I divide by whatever is in front of the y, and I get my answer of 2. So all you have to do is multiply by the numbers that are in front, add the middle numbers, and then divide, and you have your answer. And we take that number and just put the 2 back in to any of the equations. So I'm going to put the 2 in. I'm going to change the color here. I'm going to put the 2 for the y right here. So I'm going to put it in for the first equation. So there's my 2. And now I just solve this equation. So it's 4x plus 12 equals 32. And so I subtract 12, so it gives me 20 equals 4x. And I divide by 4, I get my x equals 5. So my answer is 5, 2. So let's do the same problem the same way. So now we're going to do this next problem the same way. But to do this, we must have things in order. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this 5r and 2t so they're in order. So I'm going to put the 5r plus 2t equals 6. So once I've changed the order so the letters are matched up, I'm going to multiply the top by whatever I see down here, which is a negative 5. And I'm going to multiply the bottom by whatever I see up there, which is a 9. So I do my multiplication. So it's a negative 45r. Negative 5 times 2 would be a negative 10t, and negative 5 times 22 would be a negative 110. Then I multiply the bottom. I get 45r, and 9 times 2 is 18t, and 9 times 6 is 54. So after I do my multiplication, we always go multiply, add, divide. So this will always cancel out, so I add. 18 and negative 10 is 8t. And negative 110 added to 54 is 56 negative. And then I divide by 8. Divide by 8. And when I divide by 8, I get t equals negative 7. So once you have one letter, you substitute back in. So I'll substitute that to the first one. So 2, I'm going to put the negative 7 where the t is, plus 5r equals 6. And so now I solve for r, so it's a negative 14 plus 5r equals 6. Add 14 to both sides, add 14. So I get 5r equals 20. Divide by 5, so r equals 4. So my answer is 4 negative, let me write that correctly. It'll be 4 negative 7. So let's do the same method again. I'm going to multiply the top number by whatever I see here. So see, I see a 2, so I'm going to write 2, but I'm going to change the sign. And then whatever I see on the top, which is a 5, I put on the bottom. So I have to change one of the signs. Now I just go through the multiplication. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10x. Negative 2 times 6 is a negative 12y. And negative 2 times a negative 8 is a positive 16. Then I multiply the bottom. 5 times 2 is 10x. 5 times 3 is 15y. And 5 times negative 5 is a negative 25. Once I do my multiplication, I always add. These will always cancel. So this is 3y equals a negative What is that? 9. And then I divide. So it's always multiply, add, divide. In that order, always. Divide by 3, divide by 3, y equals a negative 3. So once I have 1, I can substitute, and I'll do another color, back in the first equation. So I have a 5x plus 6, and I'm going to put a negative 3 in for the y, equals a negative 8. So now I just solve this equation. 5x minus 18 equals negative 8. I add 18 to both sides. I get 10 equals 5x, divide by 5, divide by 5, x equals 2. So my equation, or my answer is 2, negative 3, because that's what the x and the y are. So let's look at the next one and do the same thing. So I'm going to multiply the top by 4, a negative 4, and I'm going to do the bottom by a negative 4 because that's what's the number. So I change one of the signs. So I notice I have a negative 4 and a positive 4, so I have a negative 4, and one of them is a negative 4. So I multiply. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16x. Negative 4 times a positive 3 is a negative 12y. Negative 4 times a negative 3 is a positive 12. Negative 4 times 4 is a negative 16. A negative 4 times a negative 5 is a positive 20y. Negative 4 times 5 is a negative 20. And when I add, remember it's always multiply, add, divide. I get 8y equals a negative 8, and then I divide 8. So y equals a negative 1. And when I take that and substitute back into the equation, I get a negative 4x plus 3 times negative 1 equals a negative 3. And then I solve. Negative 4x minus 3 equals negative 3. Add 3 to both sides, add 3. I get 0 equals negative 4x. And I divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4, x equals 0. So my answer is 0, negative 1. Now we're going to do the multiplication method one more time so you can see it again. So I'm going to multiply the top by whatever this number is, which is a 3, but I'm going to change its sign. I'm going to multiply the bottom by whatever number I see on top, which is a 4. Only one of them has to change. So now I multiply. Negative 3 times 4 is a negative 12x. Negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6y. Negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. Bottom is 3 times 4, which is a positive 12. 4 times 3, which is a positive 12y. And 4 times 9, which is 36. So when then I add, these will always cancel. So I get 6y equals, and when I add, I get 12. Divide is always the next step. So I get 2. Remember, it's always multiply, add, divide. And you'll always get one answer. Now to get the second answer, I'm going to substitute the y back into the top equation. So it's going to look like 4x plus 2 times 2 equals 8. So this is 4x plus 4 equals 8. So I subtract 4 from both sides, which gives me 4x. And then when I divide by 4, because I get x equals 1. So my answer is 1, 2.